my Metaverse friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Metaverse Express Full Stop. I'm your host, Metamona, and as always, we're here to bring you the hottest topics in the Metaverse with expert insights from our special guests. Speaking of our special guests, I am so excited to have Tracey on the show today. She's the founder of H.E.R DAO, she's an advocate for promoting inclusion and diversity in Web3. Some great topics that she's going to talk to us about today. Tracey, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
I've heard so much about you. We haven't met yet. I know it's coming soon, but I've heard so much about you and the great work that you do in our space. I'm just really excited for my viewers to get to know you and learn about some of the initiatives that you're working on in the Web3 space as well. But first, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our viewers and tell us about your Web3 journey. How did you get here? Tell us.
That's a good question. So, yes, I'm Tracey Bowen. I'm the founder of H.E.R DAO. H.E.R DAO is a diverse developer DAO. We focus on women, but our journey and our mission really is to bring more inclusion and diversity to the Web3 space. So H.E.R DAO has been going for around 18 months, and we've grown really quickly. We're now operating in Africa, Asia, North and South America, and Europe. And we do various activities. We're known for scholarships, giving away a lot of money. So women can attend conferences and onboard onto Web3. We do hacker houses, we do boot camps. Essentially, we're focused on the builder. And you asked how I got here. That's
a question and we all ask each other when we're in Web3. How did you get here? Everybody has a story. Yes.
So it's a bit of a winding road, and I started as a musician. So I've been a creative and a musician for basically all of my life. I started playing classical and Spanish guitar when I was 9 years old. So I learned to read music very, very early, and then just fell into singing because I come from a place called Bristol. And if you're into music, you might know bands like Massive Attack and Portishead and all of these people. And so there was a lot of musicians where I grew up. So I fell into singing, got into a band, traveled the world, very exciting.
I can see you. I can totally see you on stage. I see Sade vibes. I see it.
I don't know about Sade. It was more, I think it was a bit more hectic than that. So
I'm surprised you didn't get into Web3 music.
Well, yeah, I mean, I will definitely. It's just that, there was this whole mission of inclusion and Web3 that I had to deal with first. So so that was my beginnings. I'm a creative, but actually, because people always find it kind of a bit weird, they're like, how did you get here tech? How did you get into tech? And actually, I don't really even see myself as a techie. I see myself as more of a futurist. So when I was a musician, we worked on cutting edge kind of music, and now it's basically transferred into the tech world. But around about 2012, 2013, I was very interested in this thing I kept on hearing about called Bitcoin. And so, like other people, I traversed the dark corners of the internet to find how you could buy this thing and what was it all about, and bought my first Bitcoin in 2013 and was just trading and, doing all this stuff that you do and getting rugged and, all of this wild west stuff.
We all got rugged, yes. At one point or another, we all got rugged, yes.
Right. And, but I was essentially always interested in the technology. That's a bit of a meme, I'm here for the tech, but I essentially could see how liberating the technology would be, especially for, revolutionizing and evolving financial systems that had already, that had historically, not being fair for a lot of people. So I think this is what people see when they see things like Bitcoin and decentralization. It sparks this whole sort of, oh my God, this is our chance. Maybe we can have a fairer system. Maybe we can, take back control and all of this stuff. So it's very exciting. And I used to go to meetups in London. And that was where we saw Vitalik for the first time. So Vitalik came to a meetup in London and explained about this thing called Ethereum and smart contracts. I knew then that he would change the world. It's kind of this feeling that you get. You're like, oh my God, like something's happening. And so, and then here we are. But this led me on to become a builder because I was always interested in the building space. I didn't want to just be a speculator and kind of trade shitcoins. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that. Beep.
Guilty as charged, but yes.
But always interested in the building space. But especially back in the day, it wasn't as easy to identify how to move into this space. So you saw that the people building stuff were generally developers. They had a lot of computer science knowledge, and it really wasn't easy for people who didn't have that sort of knowledge to kind of move into the build space. So I started building maybe 3-4 years ago, running teams of devs, building decentralized applications. I did data research. I did AI research before AI was actually, popular. And it all centered around, the harm that kind of tech can do and the, biases inherent in the machine learning process. But after all this research, I came to the conclusion that, if we want the future to look like us, then we have to build it.
Absolutely.
And that whole journey into democratization of tech and really making this about ordinary people and how can ordinary people get into Web3, not just as speculators, but as builders. How can they, have that agency to build things themselves? That was the impetus for H.E.R DAO, because I was building and I couldn't see enough diverse teams. And it was hard for me to find those teams. And so I kind of stopped what I was doing and just started this diverse developer pipeline. And here we are.
I wanted to have you on the show because you really are passionate about diversity and inclusion in Web3. And that's something that our space today still struggles with. And we're going to talk about that. I consider you a DAO expert. So I want us to talk about we're going to talk about DAOs first, just a little bit, just to get our audience warmed up. And then I want to take us to that more important topic of diversity, access, and inclusion. But just for my audience, my mainstream audience, they're very familiar with DAOs. We've already talked about it and covered it on the show. But for those who are new, they may not know what a DAO is. Would you do just a simple explanation of what is a DAO and what does it really do in this space?
Good question. Some people would say not a lot. No, but okay, so a DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, already a mouthful, right? Or already a kind of esoteric kind of term. So decentralized, why is it decentralized? In terms of the governance and the technology. So a DAO would work with flat hierarchies. No one's really in charge, and the decision making is shared. The technology is decentralized because it runs by a distributed ledger and decentralized nodes. So that's the kind of decentralized bit. The autonomous really kind of speaks to the automation. So the real concept of the DAO, the first concept of the DAO was automation at the center and people at the fringes. So a DAO would work with automated processes. And today you would see that in terms of, people, DAOs vote using, on-chain using smart contracts. And they usually have a treasury, which is on-chain. And that treasury, that multi-signature wallet works with smart contracts. And obviously, the organization bit is just, an amalgamation of people and processes. Right. So it's essentially a group that lives on the internet with no leader that uses smart contracts in its operations.
Is there really a use case for DAOs in the real world? And I'll just say this, and I want to turn the question over to you. At NFT NYC, I spoke on the topic of the next iteration of news and media journalism. And I did present the idea of a DAO structure in a news organization from the standpoint of transparency, right? I feel like there's some areas in the real world where DAOs could have some use cases. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think in a perfect world, let's say all the stars align, are there problems in the real world that a DAO can potentially solve?
Potentially, yes. I mean, especially if you look at a DAO as a digital cooperative, in terms of the transparency and decision making, I think it's very attractive for people today to have access to that level of transparency and autonomy and real agency in decision making, because you don't necessarily see that in a lot of traditional structures. The blockchain is immutable, and again, that can aid trust, right? So in terms of provenance, in terms of checking whether a certificate or a document is real, checking that a transaction happened and no one's tampered with it, these things are very attractive for people.
Is the blockchain really needed? Is
Most
it the
of the time,
blockchain? No. Right. So is it the blockchain that's making the DAO? Does the DAO need the blockchain, or can we just create an organization, which is very similar to me, like a HOA,
yeah,
for your apartment, right? There's
yeah,
a group of people that make decisions for the better of the community, right?
yes, yeah.
So do we need to attach a blockchain to that?
No, you do not. And this is the thing, cooperatives have been around for a very long time. And that's essentially what a DAO is in digital form. And I think because blockchain and the technology has become very popular and a buzzword, people think they need to, have a blockchain and a DAO to do everything, and essentially you don't. I would actually advise against it unless you really need it or it really suits your use case. And in a lot of use cases, you do not need a DAO and you do not need a blockchain, right? People tokenize things for no reason. And so
unless you want to automate a process within that community, correct?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, you need to look at your activity and your particular goals and your use cases, and really decide whether making a DAO or using the blockchain is right for you, or it will make any difference whatsoever. And as I said, most of the time, if you look at most people's activities, they probably don't need a blockchain. But, as I said, there are things that using decentralized technology and systems do provide, that kind of removing trust from an equation, so you don't have to trust people to give you money at a certain point. So say if there's an investment organization, right, you could use a smart contract to return the funds to you at certain time when certain conditions are met, right? And you completely take out the human aspect and the trust, right? But I'm not sure whether you can completely eliminate trust even in a DAO structure, even if you automate a lot of processes, because you still need humans, and all DAOs start from this centralized point of like an idea, like a person has an idea or a group of people have an idea, and they're the proponents that have to set up these systems, right? Until AI starts spinning up DAOs, without any human interaction. We probably will need humans to run DAOs.
And I also think that bringing tokenomics into all this makes it even more complicated, because when you and I were talking yesterday, we talked about, you mentioned to me that H.E.R DAO doesn't utilize tokens. How did you incorporate DAO into your organization? Do you still follow that structure?
We use POAPs, which is a form of token, but it's not, we don't have a fully fledged DAO token. We use POAPs to symbolize membership, and for now, it gives general voting rights. When we're going to evolve the governance structure, we're going to do weighted sort of voting, and different tokens or different levels of membership will give you different weights in voting. So if you want to vote on something that will fundamentally change the DAO, for example, you would have had to have contributed quite a lot for quite a while to have that level of weight. And I think that's what we're kind of gearing towards now. So, and there's some great articles on POAP governance. Actually, I suggest people to.
What is H.E.R DAO focusing on mainly?
We are focusing on sustainable income. This is the problem for like a lot of DAOs, right? You start with this great idea, you start with this mission and these mandates. The reality is, right, it's very hard. Like, even if you're just a business, right, strategically finding ways to maintain sustainable income so people get rewarded for contributions. So in a DAO, you're not really contracted to work there. You don't get wages per se, unless your DAO is like a business. But you get rewarded, usually by tokens. Now we've set up the DAO. As I said, we don't have a DAO token, but we use kind of like a sponsorship model at the moment for our activities. So that means every activity is funded by external sponsors. But that is not sustainable. And what we're focusing on right now is to utilize ways that we can establish and maintain sustainable income. So we're looking at turning a lot of our activities into businesses, because actually DAOs are great for community building, but not so effective for running a business. So
very true. Yes.
So it's highly likely that we will still have the central DAO, and then you will have these business type structures that come off of the center and run as kind of separate entities. So you can actually, have these generating businesses, which then can be, some of that income can be used to sustain the DAO. But, this is a whole topic for DAOs, because, and I think that's why DAOs essentially, most of them struggle, and, some of them unfortunately die out because there just isn't enough, maybe not enough thought, maybe, but like, you need to create these strategic structures so you can, service DAO activities. And so that's our main actual focus. And we're always continuing with governance. We've just done our first sort of community proposals on chain. And this is another thing like I wanted to discuss. Like, people think it's really easy to evolve your community from a top-down sort of structure to a bottom-up structure, because we just take it kind of as, for granted that like people want decentralization, and like we think that will just translate into build it and they will come. But we found, but build it and they will come does not actually work in Web3. And we found that there's a lot of hand holding, there's a lot of mentoring that needs to be done. So we're in that process now of doing initial votes, very simple votes, to get the community used to writing proposals, getting them used to voting, getting them used to this whole sort of on-chain life, because we haven't had that. We've spent the last year and a half establishing activities, seeing what our business or, our sustainable activities were, and this is taking quite a long time, because a lot of people spend a lot of time on governance before they've sussed out whether their activities are even sustainable. So imagine building this whole framework for this thing that you think is going to work, and then it doesn't work. So you've kind of wasted a bit of time there. Also, the activities may actually inform other processes. So I think you always, in our experience, we've had to give it time to get used to the way we work and the business activities, and then form, and then build out the full governance.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to do here, and you brought up a good point, and that is a lot of hand holding is required here. I mean, down to the language that we use in this space. We now are starting to say, let's use a language that the mainstream actually understands. And then there's this whole idea of this space being intimidating. Initially, I want to bring diversity into this because this is such a passion of yours. A few years ago when we all started in this, this was a very male dominated space. And just recently, more women are starting to come in and realizing that actually Web3 stands for creators economy, and it stands for content ownership, and women are creatives, right? And so slowly they're starting to realize, hey, I can actually utilize my skill here. I know this is something that you focus on a lot, and another topic that goes hand in hand with this that you and I talked about yesterday is access, because you can have diversity, you can bring in women, you can bring in minorities, but a lot of these minorities are also from countries that may not have access to get into Web3, even though it's such a borderless space. Talk to us about your experience with diversity in this space, and then how do you bring them into this space? How do you bring access into these countries that don't have access?
I think, first of all, the way we approach our inclusion work and our diversity work is we always meet people where they are. I think a lot of the diversity initiatives you'll see are very kind of surface level. They haven't really thought about the whole sort of journey or the person that they're trying to reach, right? So like, people might say, oh, we've got free tickets for this marginalized group, without thinking, oh, but this person also needs to get there. They also need somewhere to stay, and it's probably horrendously expensive. And this person needs to move around town and pay for food, etc. So, in that instance, a free ticket is not much good, right? And there's like loads of things to think about in terms of your audience. So we focus mainly on women, and there's maybe slightly different strategies that you would use if you want to connect with women. And connection is the key, right? It's usually quite personal. It's usually, people like talking, to each other. It's very kind of like one-on-one. And yeah. people have cited that mentoring is one of the most important things that you could do in Web3, especially in terms of women. Having that buddy system, having that person that you can go to for advice and support is actually really valuable, because when you enter these spaces, you won't see a lot of people that look like you. You might go into a room and you're like,
me and you.
There's nobody here. I mean, that actually happened to me at a conference the other day, and there was a side event, and I was late. And usually, I'm the sort of person, I'll just go in anywhere, talk to anybody. I actually just turned up. I looked in, and it was wall to wall men, and I was like, not today. I just can't
Not
today.
I love
I
it.
can't today. And I haven't done that in years, but there is a lot to say. There is a lot of value in representation. People always forget this equation. They'll say things like, oh, in Web3, anyone can do anything, no one's stopping you, blah, 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 right? But they forget, the power in seeing someone else like you in an environment, seeing someone else like you do certain things. When you see someone like you at a certain level doing a certain activity, you can imagine that for yourself. And that's actually quite important for people coming behind you. That's important for younger people. So representation is actually key.
Tell me what you think about this. On one hand, I feel like Web 2 wasn't like Web 3. Web 2, I feel like it didn't have even half the access we have in Web 3, with some of founders and builders who are coming out of their offices and actually talking to their communities and explaining what they're building. Initially, maybe not, but I think more and more these CEOs and founders and builders are realizing that, hey, I need to come out of from behind my computer, get on stage and talk to people and explain what we're building. So in one hand, I feel like the access to builders and creators is better in Web3, but then but then again, I also think in certain ways, it's hard still for people from Web2 to come into Web3. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the people from Web 2 have an advantage in that they've been introduced to tech already. And actually, in terms of developers, they will be using similar languages. So, if you're building in Web3, you might still be using Python, you might still be using JavaScript and stuff. So that transition for developers isn't so hard. And there's, platforms that make that transition easier. If you're coming from like a non-development Web2 field, then it's probably night and day for you in terms of the culture, in terms of what our world looks like. I love the thing I love about Web3 is no one really cares about what you wear, or it's like we go to conferences in jeans and t-shirts, usually sweatshirts, and you cannot tell who the billionaires are or the devs are. Everyone kind of looks the same. In a Web2 kind of conference, maybe not. You're going to see,
yeah.
You're going to see people in suits and, dressed up and stuff. So I kind of like that irreverence of Web3 in terms of how people
it's low
look.
maintenance. It's
very, very
it's
low
very low
maintenance.
maintenance. Tracey, talk to women. We have women who are in the audience and watching. How do they start? How do they get in here? I do want to talk about hackathons. I just recently found out what they are, and you do many of them. But I want you to talk to women who might be watching, and they're like, man, how do I get into this Web3 thing? Talk to them.
I mean, essentially, join H.E.R. I mean, this is what H.E.R was built for. We have a lot of people who maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, didn't know anything about Web3. So they joined, and quickly they were encouraged to build, because we're always doing hackathons and we're always following ETH Global conferences all around the world and stuff like that. So people find that even though they may not have technical knowledge, or even if they're a developer and they haven't done Web3 building before, they find actually they're welcomed into a hackathon team. We make it easy for people to join. We've actually just built a coding club, which really helps people with continuous building and building at their own pace as well, because we're obviously a community of builders. But we make that transition as easy and personable as possible, and then get people stuck into what our core mission is, which is building, right? And then, even going to that conference, you're surrounded by all of these people, all of these wonderful people, all of these really new ideas, and it's terribly exciting. And after that, people just keep going. They keep going and they find that, being in H.E.R and things like H.E.R gives you that supportive network. And I think that supportive network is exactly what people need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want people to understand, and maybe you can give us a view of the demographic. They're not just coders and developers though, right? Like if a woman is watching, if somebody's watching and they're like, well, I'm not a coder, I'm not a builder, I'm in communications. Is there a place for me?
Honestly, this is what I say to everyone. Whatever skill you have is transferable into Web3. I think people have all, I think this is our fault as well. When we talk about Web3, we talk about development, but we don't, in terms of technical development, but we don't talk enough about the skills that are the other skills that are needed to build great products. We believe that to build a great product, you need a holistic team. And in that team, there are going to be writers, there's going to be, project
Storytellers.
managers. Storytellers are so important. You could be the smartest person on the world with the best product. If you cannot tell that story, that product is probably not going to go very far. And it's always the people who can tell the best stories that are most successful, right? Yeah. And these people are not technological in any way sometimes, but you can see how important they are. So this is the message that we're always trying to tell people, especially new people who say, oh, do I have to become a developer now? No, you do not, right? And mostly in our teams, we have a good mixture of developers, designers, even because, things have to look good. We have to design the user experience and the user journey. These things are done by front-end developers, designers, some people who don't have any technical knowledge, but they know how, a user design is supposed to look like. So yeah, holistic team, and you don't need to be a developer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can think that you might be a fashion designer, right? Or you might be like me, like a storyteller, and you come in because, like you said, any product that is being built, whether it's a game, whether it's in DeFi and banking, you still have to tell a story. So even if you're a fashion designer and you're at this hackathon, the networking that you're providing at these hackathons is to bring the developer together with the storyteller, to bring that developer together with the fashion designer, right? Because I am seeing, and this is based on my own experience, that Web3 is very collaborative. I'm seeing a lot of hybrid of Web 2 and Web 3. And I think that's inevitable, right? You have to bring those skills and attach them to this next iteration of technology. Walk us through the process of the hackathon. If somebody wants to participate, how do they start? What does the process look like? What is the experience going to be like for them from beginning to end?
So now we actually have formalized our pathways a bit more. We now have a coding club group, so you can participate in real life hackathons with teams as well, because before we were more concentrated on in real life hackathons, so we'd kind of get a scholarship together and fund people to physically travel to a hackathon. But now we're facilitating where if you just want to join a hackathon, you can literally join the coding club, and you'll see that there are probably 3 or 4 hackathons going on at any one time. You can join the group at any level, and you basically work with a group of people, and you are held and supported. You can do your own kind of self-study, and I think this is a really nice way for us to support the community to kind of upskill in their own time. And I think in their own time is the most important thing. Usually an in real life hackathon is a very time constrained definite thing, so you have to be somewhere on 2 certain days, and then the building is done, and then you go home. With the online kind of process that we have, you can really relax and you can really take time to learn. And we're hoping that this grows into quite a large sort of community where, people can actually, as I said, upskill and learn a lot.
You said earlier that H.E.R DAO is in Africa as well, I don't know. I can't remember if you said you
Yep.
guys were going. You are in Africa.
Yeah.
I do want to know: is any hackathon happening there? What are you guys doing there?
So our first African DAO is H.E.R DAO Kenya, and they're amazing. They do really great work. They are part of the Safari DAO team that puts on each Safari. They're also part of the team that put on Dot Safari, which was the polka
Wait,
dot.
there's an Safari?
Yes, where have you been? Where have you been? And so yeah, they're really incredible women, and right now I'm just supporting them to spin up another area. So we're going to have H.E.R DAO South Africa anytime soon, which is super exciting.
Can I sign up for that? I want each
Yes,
Safari, Dot Safari,
yeah,
H.E.R
of course.
DAO Safari.
Of course, and then obviously there's actually going to be ETH Accra this year as well. So we're going to be helping out with that, and hopefully spinning up some new regions on the West Coast as well. So yeah, terribly exciting stuff. And we're working with some really cool, really dedicated, passionate people. Programs like Breaking Barriers, and they're supporting all of these young people in gaming and in development, in all sorts of areas. And so I think our main mission is to bring all of these active people together, who like-minded people who want to see African regions and people learn and build in Web3. And yeah, we've got some really exciting plans.
Oh my gosh, it seems like you are a one busy woman going from country to country, not even city. You're going from London to LA to Africa, but it's so amazing to see your energy and your drive for innovation and to bring the prosperity that can come from that to countries and people that we all know have the potential. They may not have the opportunity. And how amazing that you are bringing that opportunity to them. And that's why I want to ask you, when you look in the future, how do you see Web3 shaping a more inclusive and diverse digital future? Because it looks like we're going toward that direction, a digital future.
Yeah, the future is digital for sure. Obviously, whether we'll call it Web3 or not, probably not. Whether we'll still use the term DAO, probably not. All things are going to evolve, for sure. But I think what is for certain is that it will irrevocably change the relationship people have with the financial system, the relationship people have with businesses, corporations, and products. So, Web3 will usher in this age where it will be normal for you to control your own data, and there's other arguments even in that whole term there. We're not going to go into it. It's going to make it normal for people to control their own data, to be able to port their data from one platform to another. It's going to make it normal for people to earn rewards by engaging with their favorite artists. It's going to be normal for people to build their own dApps and have their own social tokens and all of this stuff. It's going to be normal for people to, instead of having value extracted from them, they'll be able to harness their own value, and they'll have the technology to do that.
And how exciting is that? Because Web2 advertisers and platforms took over that control, and slowly we're democratizing content. And to know that we have a chance to own our content as opposed to give that control to, big platforms, that's really exciting. Tracey, there's this question that I ask every builder who comes on my show, and I have to ask you this question too. In our space, oftentimes we focus on the what. What are we building? What are we doing? What? Rarely do we focus and talk about the why. Why are we building what we're building? So I want to give this question to you and ask you your why. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you know your why. Why are you building H.E.R DAO? Why are you building what you're building?
As I said, I did tons of research into data, because I was into people taking back control of their data, tons of research into AI and that whole kind of machine learning process, and how technology that, corporations are building are going to be and are very harmful to certain populations more than others. And so I could see the way our technological landscape was panning out. And I realized that, like, if people like me or if ordinary people do not get involved, then, it's not going to look great. It's quite a dystopian future, but I'm an optimist, right? And so I believe that people can make a difference. And so, this is why H.E.R DAO exists, because I had this vision of ordinary people being able to build the products that were going to serve them, right? Mm-hmm. And this agency that, I think people actually crave but can't really get connected to, because maybe there just isn't, if I had an idea, this great idea, where would I go to build this idea? Who would I contact? So we want to be that conduit. We want to be that place where people can come and say, I've got this brilliant idea. I don't even know how to build it or how I'm even going to do anything, but like, can you help? And, and then we would say, yes, cool. Let's try and build it. So I think the more that there are places like H.E.R DAO and people who are passionate about, building and know what the future looks like if they don't intervene, this is my kind of base level why. And of course, we want egalitarian societies. We want people to have equity. We want people to have a say in their futures. And so this is why we do things.
So is it needless to say that democratizing this next iteration of content creation and internet is what you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been my sort of thing, the democratization of tech, and really bringing this into the hands of ordinary people, so it doesn't become this esoteric thing that people think somebody else should be doing. It's this thing that is in reach, that people have the tools, people have the knowledge, or at least people know where to go. So this whole democratization process is absolutely what I'm excited about.
Well, you make us excited. Just your energy. You are such a light, such a forward-thinking, innovative woman. And it's such a pleasure to have you on the show and have you just share your incredible energy and insight with us. Tell the viewers, where can they find out about H.E.R DAO? Where can they find out about your hackathons? What if somebody just wants to talk to Tracey? Where do they go?
Okay, so you can get hold of H.E.R DAO on Telegram and Discord. So H.E.R DAO. We're also on Twitter _ H.E.R DAO. We have a link tree there. So really, either Twitter, Discord, or hit us up on Telegram. And I'm also on all of those platforms. You'll probably see me more on Telegram, but really my DMs are open, and we really should have a conversation. We forgot to talk about connectivity, which is one of the
No,
largest barriers to us all not making it. But
absolutely. No, you can talk about that. We can definitely talk about it. That's very, very important. And I know that's something you focus on as well. Yeah, let's do talk about that.
yeah, because there's a buzzword or like a phrase, in Web3, and it's we're all gonna make it. And when I
Wag
hear
me.
that,
Wag me is not wag me.
and when I hear that, I'm like, really? Are we really? Because what we're forgetting is that practically still half of the whole entire world is not connected to the internet in any meaningful way. So I think people think that because they see people in furthest flung regions of the world with smartphones, they think that they have the infrastructure to, make full use of that technology. And actually, that's something that really is going to be a barrier to everybody making it. So it's just like, if making it is making sure everyone has equal access to this technology and equal opportunity to build whatever they want and have all of these services, then if we do not concentrate on connectivity, then I'm afraid we're not taking this WAGMI philosophy very seriously. But that's something I really want to concentrate on towards the latter end of the year. Like, once I start running around the world and doing all of these like in real life hackathons and stuff, I'm going to have like a whole kind of global plan and ask a lot of projects to come on board, because we're all over the world anyway. It would be really not very hard for us to set up programs with local people and governments, in connection with, like, projects can help, maybe other investors can help, but you can get a whole consortium of people to look at what the issues are in a very practical sense in each location, because they're going to be like slightly different, but it's really going to involve getting down on the ground and actually building infrastructure is what it's going to be, right?
And
It's really
Charles Hoskinson does some of that work, I believe. I want to say Vitalik does a little bit of that work as well, but you're absolutely right. I mean, these are the leaders that would essentially be paving that path, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to hit up Vitalik and Charles in a minute. So actually, if anyone's watching and they want to get on this connectivity drive with me, then please hit me up, DM me on Twitter, Telegram, whatever, and let's start the process. Yeah, so I'm glad we got to talk about that briefly, because it's super important.
It is very, very important. And I know I'm a big fan of Charles Hoskinson. I'm a big fan of Vitalik. And if you listen to their bigger mission, obviously Vitalik wants to build the world's computer and is building the world's computer. But Charles Hoskinson also has a bigger mission, and his vision is more borderless and wraps around the infrastructure that you're talking about and helping to bring access to some of these countries as well. A whole conversation to have. I'm so happy that at least we could touch the surface together. So I hope there's more to come. I know you're on the road. I'm just so glad I could grab you and have some of these conversations with you. I know there's much more to come. This is just the beginning with the both.
And if this comes out before next week, then please sign up to 3XP Hackathon. You can participate remotely, you can participate in person at the Pasadena Convention Center, but we'd love to see. We have such a great program in real life. So sign up at hdgames.gg.
Yep, and tell them what 3XP is too. That is a gaming convention that is happening this weekend, correct? In
Thursday,
Los
Friday
Angeles.
next week. Thursday, Friday next week. On the 8th and 9th in Los Angeles. Yeah, 3XP is actually a Web3 gaming conference. So you have esports, you have a hackathon, you have startup programs. There's a lot of VCs there. It's going to be super dope. And we are running the hackathon. It's great that we got a chance to do it because it means that a lot of the hackers are going to be from diverse communities. We even have a bit of music programmed in. So we're going to have some live music there as well, which I'm super excited about. But we're also getting speakers to do virtual presentations as well, because not obviously everyone can come to LA. So we're just going to publish our program this weekend, but it's going to be fab. So come and join, whether in real life or remotely in LA. Thank you.
Oh, of course. A lot of my good friends are going to be there. I'm going to miss it, but maybe I can get on that virtual stage that Tracey is building for speakers to talk on. I can always talk about storytelling. Tracey, I cannot wait to see what's next for you in your project, especially the advancements that you're going to bring into the Web3 space. Thank you so, so much again for your time and attention, and I cannot wait to see you again.
Thank you, Mona.
Of course, and we're going to do this again. Guys, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. We'll be back again next week with more hot topics in the metaverse. Until then, I'm your host, Mona. Stay well.